of yesterday. I'd like to go to the second slide. So before we dive into, I would like to remind you of the fact that you've just possibly heard that we've set up the recording. If you want to be blurred or excluded from the recording, feel free to send us a message. We'd be happy to do so. Moreover, we'd be very happy if you would turn up your camera. We'd like to see the faces that are in the audience. But at the same time, please keep yourself on mute just to make sure that we can hear our speakers very well. If you have any questions throughout or you want to share something, feel free to do so. The chat is there for everyone. I will be moderating alongside my colleagues to provide any answers to your questions. And then what we're going to dive into is actually started by Fiona for an introduction to WageIndicator, followed by why are we actually publishing our living wage estimates, a little bit on the WageIndicator methodology, followed by the actual showcasing of the publication, of course, and you will hear from a couple of speakers around the importance of publicly available data. Then without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to our moderator of the day, Fiona Dragstra, and wish you a good session.
Thanks a lot, Fief, and welcome everybody to our webinar where we officially launch our living wage estimates for 165 countries and over 2,600 regions within those countries. Officially, we launched yesterday on May 1st, which is the International Workers' Day. Of course, we did that for a reason, but Pauline will tell you a little bit more about that. But today, I would like to walk you through, first of all, who we are as WageIndicator, and also how we came to the point of launching and publishing living wage estimates for all these countries. And so, like Chief said, warm welcome to everybody. And if you want to, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from, or from which country you're calling in. We always love to see and hear that. And also, while everybody is speaking during the day, please feel free to put your answers put your questions in the chat. Our team will try their best to answer all of your questions. If we cannot answer a question, we will let you know as well. And please put yourself on mute, but please do open your video if you can, and if your internet connection allows. Without further ado, I would like to give you a small introduction to WageIndicator. Come to the next slide, please. So who are we? Basically, this year not only marks the publication of our living wage estimates, but also marks 25 years of WageIndicator. And I'll walk you through how we came to that point. Back in 1999, Pauline Osse and Gerard Tijdens started thinking about building a salary check for the Dutch labor market, which they called the Vrouwenloonwijzer. And the Vrouwenloonwijzer was a website where women in the Dutch labor market could check their salary and assess what they could earn in relation to their level of education, the amount of hours that they worked, and in the type of organization that they worked in. And so we started with a salary check back in 1999, and we actually still have a salary check that you can visit not only on the Dutch website, but across 90 countries now. Then we slowly but steadily moved on, and back in 2006, we started creating our minimum wage database, which currently has over 30,000 entries from over 208 countries and territories in the database, and we know that the database is heavily used. Of course, after the minimum wage database that we created, but of course still maintained to date, we started creating the labor law database, which we also created back in 2008 and now maintain ongoing. And the labor law database now currently covers 140 countries and is annotated as such that you can also compare national labor law across countries. So not only understand it for your the national context, but also understand it in a globally comparable way. Of course, we didn't stop with labor law, but because when you talk about labor law and minimum wages and wages in general, of course, you also want to understand collective bargaining, and with that, collective bargaining agreements or collective agreements. And so back in 2011, we started creating our collective agreements database. And the collective agreement database currently covers over 2,500, close to 3,000 collective agreements that can be compared between each other, and they are in national languages as well, of course. And the collective agreements can be used by everybody and are used by trade union partners, by workers themselves, and by researchers as well. Of course, the collective agreement database is ongoing, like the other one as well. Then in 2014, 13, 14, we started talking with our partners at CELSI, who you'll hear about from today as well. And we started thinking about, if we have all of these big databases across the world in all these countries and languages, can we not do the same when it comes to cost of living and hence living wage? And so back in 2014, we started creating and collecting data on prices that the team will tell you about more. And we started building our living wage database. And that's fast forward 10 years later, that's where we are today. With launching officially with all of you today, the publication of living wage estimates for over 165 countries and all of the regions within. And to close off, why we as WageIndicator do this is because we have databases that are connected with each other around the labor market. So we have information about earned wages or actual wages and salaries, minimum wages, collective agreements, labor laws, and now also living wage, because all of these types of information are connected with each other. So it makes sense to have them connected and to talk about living wage, not in isolation, but in connection with minimum wages, with collective agreements, and with labor law in national context, but also to have them internationally comparable. And that's why we're here today. Last but not least, I also want to share with you that we have a global team of over 100 people working on all of these databases on a day-to-day basis. And we have over 300 data collectors that collect all of this information for us, but also for all of you. And I would like to acknowledge their work because without them, it would never be possible. But now I would like to give you the floor to Pauline Osse, co-founder of WageIndicator and the lead of our living wage team, to tell you why we actually publish. Pauline.
Thanks, Fiona. Then can everybody hear me? Yes. Then thank you. Great. I would say why publishing living wages? You can't share data with the house and not the house not. That is a bit of principle from the beginning. So when we started WageIndicator, okay, and I started WageIndicator 25 years back, we had the idea you do it for people, workers, small employers, trade unions, employers, academics, and government. Basically, you do it for everybody. And we assume that not only a company or a government, but also people, just people, need proper up-to-date data. Because otherwise they never can decide on basis of proper information. Which means we don't tell them what to think. They can think from themselves, but everybody needs proper data. And what we see as well with doing this, that the minimum wage database, which we have since 2006, is by far the most popular. Even today, where you might think that living wage is hot, minimum wage is more hot. That's how it is. Then many databases we publish, as Fiona said, but publishing the living wages was another ball game. We would have loved it to do it for people, but also for any company with a complex supply chain and a living wage wish, but it's not always possible. We have been able to finance most of our databases with grants, academic projects, development aid, but financing an ongoing database with quarterly updates on living wages for years reliable needs much more than just project money. To do this good, reliable for years, you need support. This job is not trivial. Imagine, as we speak, really literally as we speak, people in Congo, Yemen, parts of China, Ethiopia do data collection. Data collection can be very dangerous. And I can tell you in Gaza at the moment, it's impossible. Although we have clients who say, where's the data from Gaza? It's just not possible to have data collection in Gaza. Okay, 300 people around the world do this job on permanent basis. They have year contracts to do this, ongoing and ongoing. And to do this good, let's say, online in publication, but also in selling, from yesterday onwards, we will do both. Publication of the most important estimates for people, workers, employers, and trade unions. This guaranteed publication as a public good is supported by big companies to make sure that those who can't afford still have data because they need it. And the big firms, by the way, as well. And we do an ongoing data sales. We sell complex data sets, have question and answers within 24 hours, as most of our clients do. And for dear consultants, please bring your morale back, we would say. Don't steal the data, but buy it. Then we can guarantee not only 3 years of solid data publication, but many, many more years. Because any new data set which will be sold today, a part will be saved for year 4, because the first 3 years are, thank God, okay already. And enough about the morale. Let's thank our team. That's our close team and our broader team and some outsiders. First of all, Martin Cousy, because I remember that in 2013, we started with the first idea of a living wage for 100 countries. Then we started with living wage in context. Thanks, Martin Granik, for all the support. Thanks, Daniela Chekon, for the day by day support together to make it happen. Thanks, Akash Botra, for every day making the difficult sheets. Thanks, Niyasha, for all, let's say, for be there, do the perfect calculation and be stable, thank God. Mayor Kalra for all the mapping, complex mapping. Rupa Korda for being stable, having loads and loads of contracts, invoices, etc. Thank for it. Then Fiona and Vivian for the support the last 1.5 years to make this happen. And of course, 300 data collectors. On top, I would say Sriya Medkopali. She started during the period of Corona, and she trained over 1,000 data collectors in all these years, which is a hell of a lot. A lot she did online, but she did a great job. Outside of our team, I would say a special thank you to Honor Johnson, IDH, because 3 years back, we were in Zoom over Christmas, just before Christmas, drinking a glass of wine and discussing publication. And there we started. So it's already, the wishes are already there to make this happen 3 years back. Finally, thanks for Simon Hindley, also making this possible, and for all your smart questions. Simon is from Unilever. Thanks a lot. And now I hand over back to Fiona.
Thanks a lot, Pauline. Of course, I can imagine that most of you are also curious to learn more about how we actually come to these numbers in all of these countries. So without further introduction, I would like to give the floor to Daniela Chekon, who's the data director at WageIndicator, and Ni Asha, who's one of our lead data scientists, who will run you through the WageIndicator methodology, and also explain you a little bit more of what the publication looks like. Me and Danny, you have the floor.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay, so to estimate cost of living, we work with data collectors worldwide who collect quarterly price data in a cost of living survey. This survey reflects the requirements needed for an individual and their family to meet their basic needs, such that it can be applied globally. And these basic needs are categorized into 10 baskets of goods and services, as you can see on the screen. The food budget is country specific. We use FAO baskets to determine the food requirements for each country. We scale it down to 2,100 calories as recommended by the World Bank, and adjust it for a healthy diet using the World Health Organization's advice. So even though we collect the same prices worldwide, we adjust the food for the country. Also for the housing, we collect prices for a 2-bedroom house, as well as the utilities in areas that are not central or upmarket and not located in a slum or an unsafe area. We assume that children attend public schools and have free access or a substantial discount to public transportation. And thus we account for public school costs and the adult public transportation costs. For phone costs, we collect prices on the phone tariff of a mobile monthly plan. So that is at least 120 minutes and 10 gigabytes of internet. For clothing and drinking water, we collect information about the monthly expenditure of a family of 4, and we adjust for family size. For healthcare, we collect out-of-pocket expenses, as well as period and birth control products. And we include the cost of a basic health insurance when there is no free public healthcare system in the country. And on top of this, we add a 5% margin for emergency expenses. We then calculate the cost of living as the sum of the monthly budgets of these baskets. We present them in a range to reflect the variations of prices for 2 family types. We have the typical family and a standard family. We present these figures on a national and a regional level per country when we meet thresholds for the number of prices collected. So let's say, for example, for food, we would only calculate when we have between 2,000 and 6,000 food prices, and for housing, between 50 to 200 housing prices. We then calculate the living wage as the sum of the cost of living and the applicable income tax and social security contributions. In a snapshot, this is the methodology that we use in calculating the living wages. If you want to know more about the methodology, you can read we have a living wages worldwide report. The link will be provided in the chat, as well as a frequently asked questions session. Okay, so I'll hand over to Danny now to talk about the publication.
Okay, thanks, Nii. Can we move to the next slide, please? So yeah, now you know how we calculate our numbers, but how do we publish them? So as Fiona was saying, we calculate living wage estimates and publish living wage estimates now in more than 165 countries and more than 2,600 regions. The living wage we publish is the typical family living wage, and in particular, we publish the guidance version, which is a capped version of the yearly average 2023. The yearly average is basically the average of the 4 quarters we delivered in 2023. Of course, we publish this for each region, but it can happen that for some regions we don't have the yearly average available. So in that case, we publish the latest estimates from the latest quarter, which in this case is April 2024. There are some cases where our living wages are lower than the minimum wages in a country. In that case, we decided to show a link to the minimum wages instead. So as Fiona said earlier, we run the biggest minimum wage database in the world. So we have that information. And in the published pages, in that case, our users will find a link to the relevant minimum wage. In case there is no minimum wage, but we know that there is a higher collectively negotiated wage, in that case, we show that instead. This is the case of a few Nordic countries. Yes, we also have a huge collective agreements database. So from that, we can know also the collectively agreed wages. And in these published pages, in this case, you will find an explanation with the source, the amount of the collectively agreed wage, and the links. There are 2 more exceptions in the publication, and this is the United States and the United Kingdom. In the case of the US, we have a partnership with Living Wage for Us. So instead of publishing our estimates, because we know they publish higher living wages, we decided to provide a link to their website instead. And the same happens for the UK. Where we have a partnership with Living Wage Foundation UK, and in that case, we link to their site and to their estimates. How often will we update these pages? In principle, most of the data will be updated annually. So in October 2024, we'll come out with a new yearly average, so a new guidance number, and all the existing ones will be replaced at that time. But of course, we keep on checking on a quarterly basis the comparison with the minimum wage, and also the latest estimates for those regions where there's no yearly average. So in July, we expect the new estimates to be ready, so they will replace the April ones in that case. But let's see how the pages look online. Vivian, can you share maybe the entrance page first? Yes, so this is the website of Kenya, and this is the first page that the users will see when they want to see the living wage estimates. There are a couple of, there is some information we would like to collect first, as you can see, and then we ask for email address and phone number. We need this information because we'll then send the code to the user, either on email or on phone, and this code can be used after in the next page to enter the living wage page. So maybe we can already see, yeah. So this is how the page for Kenya, Nairobi in particular, looks like. So that's what you see after you log in. As Pauline said in her introduction, we publish for all. So of course, we try to have this page as clear and as straightforward as possible. So we put the living wage rates on top. You see it per month and per hour. And then below that, we are showing a graph, which is showing the composition of the living wage with the amount of each component. So it's clear how much of the living wage is used for food, how much for housing, and so on. Below the graph, there's quite a bit of a longer section where we try to explain in the easiest way how we calculate a living wage, what it is, and basically what is being shown here, and some links to related pages that we have. Of course, this you see now, this is in English because this is Kenya, but of course this page is available in each of the country websites in the national language. I think this is all from our side. Vivian, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Dani. I see that we have a little bit of time, so I wonder, and we have quite a few questions on the methodology that are in the chat. So I wonder, maybe Dani and me, we can address some of the questions on the methodology before we move on to the next session. And one of them, for example, is about the publication once a year. And in that, if we publish once a year, how do we ensure that the living wage data is up to date for countries with high or hyperinflation?
Okay, so of course, now we publish the data of October 2023. So the inflation in 2024 is not taken into account. But in that case, for that 1 year, those who want to use the estimates will have to go for the 2023. But in October, there will be updated estimates, which will show all the variations, I guess. So yeah, this doesn't work for the for those regions where we have quarterly data published. So the estimates in July will be, of course, more up to date than the ones that you see now that are from April. But for most of the rates, you'll just see the updated numbers in October 2024.
Great, thanks a lot. And we also have a question from Indonesia. If the basic calculation formula is adjusted every year, or if we have a standard formula.
Okay, maybe me can pick this one up.
Yes, so we have a basic formula that we use. We sometimes update it when we add new components, when research shows that there are other baskets or other additions that are needed to live a decent and basic life. Yes, then we add it. but also noting that when you add a new component, then it's difficult to compare to the previous figure that had a slightly different methodology. But yes, when we find out that there are components that we need to add, yes, we update and add that.
Maybe in addition, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, so now initially we did not have health insurance cost, but now we add that.
Maybe also worth saying, there are some information that are country specific that we use. So for example, the diet is something that the FAO comes out regularly. I mean, there are some updates every now and then, and we take that into account. Similarly, the family composition, if there's a variation in the fertility rate of a country, we update that. And similarly, taxes, tax percentages can change. We keep track of that, and of course, this applies in the new calculation. But the basic formula, as me explained, stays the same.
Great, thanks a lot. I'm quickly addressing one other question that is regarding the most recent conclusions from an ILO tripartite meeting on wages and including living wages. And then I'm asking Nii and Dani to answer some of the other questions in the chat because we move on with the agenda. But there was a question on to what extent WageIndicator's methodology aligns with the outcomes of the ILO tripartite meeting back in March this year, and to most of the principles set out by the ILO in their tripartite meeting on the basis of an expert meeting on wages and living wages. WageIndicator's methodology aligns with, or at least adheres and aligns to most of the principles as set out by the ILO. And very importantly, one of the major principles from that meeting that came out was that numbers and methodologies, or estimates and methodologies, need to be publicly available. And with this move of WageIndicator publishing its estimates, we are happy that we can also publish our estimates and that they can be seen and used. Our methodology was already out in the open and publicly available, but our numbers are now there with that as well. So related to other issues of the ILO tripartite outcomes, we are in discussion with the ILO and with union partners and other stakeholders as well. But in principle, especially with this move, we do align with the principles that set out by the ILO. Yeah. With that, if you have further questions on this, please reach out and let us know how you would like to learn more about this. And I would now like to give the floor to Vivian to thank a couple of people and organizations who have helped us get this far. Please.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can also pull up the slide again to double check. Because obviously this would not have been possible but without the support of oh, sorry, my computer is acting up. Without the support of our funders, so therefore an extra moment to spotlight them here as well. A warm thank you for our partners, IKEA, Schneider Electric, as well as Unilever. And the next slide, also our sponsors, H&M, PMI, and the Hershey Company, and then followed our supporters, DSM, Firmenich, and Fairphone. Thank you all very, very much. Without you, this wouldn't have been possible, and happy to continue our collaboration. Back to you, Vienna.
Thanks a lot, Steve. And with that, I would also like to open the floor to another session where we hear from some of our partners who have gotten us this far, namely Unilever and Schneider Electric. First of all, we have a speaker from Unilever, Rachel Colburn-Walden, who's the Global Head of Human Rights at Unilever. Rachel has spent the past 15 years at Unilever in external affairs, the supply chain and at the sustainability function. And as Global Head of Human Rights, he advises Unilever on overall human rights strategy, policy, reporting, and advocacy. And prior to Unilever, she spent over 12 years in UK politics, including 3 years on 10 Downing Street as a member of Tony Blair's political office, and 5 years as head of international relations for the Labour Party. First of all, Rachel, I'd like to give you the floor to share why for Unilever it's important to have publicly available living wage data.
Great, thank you so much. And what an exciting day and long time coming. Really delighted to be sharing all this with you. And thank you to WageIndicator for always being so open, so supportive of this, and so willing to collaborate to get us to this stage. So thank you very much. So Unilever's living wage journey really started in 2014, when we created our framework for fair compensation, which included the payment of a living wage to our own direct employees. After piloting that and taking the learnings for a couple of years, we then managed to achieve compliance at the end of 2020. And in 2021, we expanded the ambition of our commitment to include those in our value chain. So everyone, direct supply chain, I should say, so that everyone who directly provides goods and service to Unilever earns at least a living wage. We have refocused our sustainability commitments, and this was launched a couple of weeks ago, but I want to be really clear that livelihoods remains integral to the priorities of Unilever from a sustainability perspective. And indeed, our commitment that everyone who directly provides goods and services to Unilever earns at least living wage does not change, has not changed, and is still a future mandatory requirement of the responsible partner policy. I think it's really important to make that clear, particularly on this call. What we did do is include an interim target that by 2026, so just in 2 years' time, 50% of our procurement spend would be with suppliers who are paying a living wage. So have signed the supplier partner promise around living wage. So 50% of our procurement spend with suppliers who have signed the living wage partner promise. And I think this is really important because this is a practical way for us to really understand what are the barriers to engage with our suppliers, to build their capability and to build their awareness. And so why have we done that? Because we have made really good progress on our living wage commitment. So all our own employees, as we've said, those direct third-party manufacturers or collaborative manufacturers who are dedicated to Unilever are paying a living wage, with progress on other collaborative manufacturers and also with those workers, third-party workers on Unilever sites. However, what we have found is still confusion around, and Pauline, you talked about it, the difference between living wage and minimum wage. And also there was real issues around transparency of data. And that is why having this information, this data public, is so important in terms of our living wage commitment, but also those of other companies. So I'm absolutely delighted that the Fair Wage Indicator has made this commitment and made this data public. We also hope very much that this will lead to other companies also making additional commitments, in addition to those that you see as sponsors on this call and for this work. So absolutely critically important. We're also really, really pleased and delighted to see that the ILO, as mentioned, is also doing work in this area. And we think that having credible and aligned data is absolutely critical. And therefore, we are absolutely aligned with this ILO work. We think, as I say, that having this information public is going to solve three of the really main issues that we have found in our journey to extend our work on living wage into our supply chain, predominantly, as I say, making certain that there is no longer confusion between the difference between legal minimum wage and living wage. Also making certain that we really do have transparency, because that has been a real barrier. So actually removing that barrier, being transparent about the data, and really encouraging the uptake of others. And we think the work of WageIndicator to make this information public is really going to solve each of those three issues and really create a ripple effect. The final point I would make, because I know it's super, super important, you've mentioned the importance of collective bargaining. Really important that we see living wage as a floor, not a ceiling, and that it must not in any way involve with collective bargaining process. I mean, that's really, really important message to get across. But I'll leave it there, and obviously really happy to answer any questions that people may have.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing Unilever's story in this. And with that, I would also like to invite Gilles Vermeaux-Desroches from Schneider Electric to share a few words on Schneider's why, for Schneider Electric, this is an important move as well. Just a quick introduction on you, or would you like to introduce yourself? That's also fine.
I have been the Chief Sustainability Officer of Schneider for 25 years, and today I'm the Chief Citizenship Officer in Schneider. And just the topic that we share today is linked to that. It's because we consider today that, yes, the climate is the topic of the century. But if we don't take care to people, if we don't have the fact that we would like to organize prosperity for people, everybody, never we can join this goal. I've been waiting for this moment for years, because to progress, we need to have measurement, but to have measurement, we need to have data. To take care to data and to trust the data, we need to have transparency. And at the end, we need to be together. And here we have these two elements, and I would like to congratulate you and to express our will to progress with this network. First, to have the relevant data to be able to tackle the question of living wage at the worldwide level. I will come back to that. And second, to be together and to share good practices and to have a network, because we need in each company, in Schneider Electric too, to convince people, to express that it's possible to tackle this topic at the high level, to have data, to ask our partners country by country, and to be sure that we have the relevant question. It's very simple, not simple, but when we have the commitment, it's very simple to tackle the question of carbon, climate change, because it's the same thing everywhere around the world. It's very easy to have the commitment about the social aspect of ESG, in fact, in Schneider Electric, but after it's very, very difficult to develop that. Just two things about this topic. We are far from the expectation about sustainable development goals, but I'm sure it's possible if we consider we have to tackle the topic of people in the same time that the topic of the planet, environment, climate, and biodiversity together. The speed of action on planet boundaries is a funding of the speed of action of inequality and poverty. And with this relevant element that we share today, this measurement that we can share with many companies and with some others, certainly we can open the new step of the topic, because inequality reduces trust. Inequality has been a source of local and worldwide systemic risk. And for our company, we can contribute to reduce this systemic risk. When we are speaking about living wage, we are speaking about something which is key, perhaps basic in the middle of all the topic linked to human rights. But for companies, it's the manner, the first, not the only manner, the manner to contribute to the progress of the populations, of the workers, in the company, in the complete value chain. We know that today, when we are speaking about this century and all the things that we have to do to tackle the question of sustainable development goals, the elephant in the room is inequality. And inequality, it's a lot of topics, but never that it will be possible in the future if the poorest, 50%, take less than 10% of earning at the worldwide level. And in the poorest, we have the people who are working without a decent work and something linked to that. In Schneider Electric, we have decided to tackle the topic for a long time. It's difficult, but we know that it's a question of relationship with our suppliers and in our entire value chain. In our 11 worldwide goals, we have many goals linked to climate, resource, social aspect in the company, but we have one goal, which is to embark our main suppliers to be sure that they have the right level of living wage country by country. It's close to be impossible to do that alone, but now with the commitment that we have together, with the data that we'll provide, we can have relevant questions to our partner and to support them to progress in order to demonstrate to our clients that when they have trust on Schneider Electric, sure, our products are the best for environment, but sure too, we respect everywhere, at every time, with everybody in our value chain, human rights and all the topics linked to human rights, and especially the question of living wage for the people who are working a time for us. We need what we push today, and so for that it's very interesting for the next decade and how we can use that. To conclude, all the companies who are here are leaders on this topic. We know that it's very, very difficult to progress, but certainly because we will share our practice, we could progress, accelerate the progress that we would like to have on this topic. And sure, we are here in a topic which is a fundamental topic to increase the economic development, to embark people in the transition that we have to live together, and to organize an access to the future for all.
Thanks a lot, Gilles. Great to hear. And I would very much like to also give the floor after this to our lovely Martin Kahanek. I don't know where he is.
I'm right here for now.
Hello, good. I want to kindly give the floor to Martin Kahanek, who's a professor at the Central European University in Vienna, and also the scientific director of CELSI, the Central European Labor Studies Institute. Together with CELSI for the past 17, 16 years, we've been working together very closely. And the CELSI team, as well as Martin's team, have been instrumental to the development of our living wage methodology. And I would very much like to ask Martin to also share from the perspective of the researchers and broader civil society on what the importance is of this public data, and maybe your broader view on living wage as well and its importance, and perhaps close us off for the day. Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a totally exciting moment, and it's a great honor to speak on this groundbreaking occasion. We put a lot of energy and a lot of brains and a lot of inspiration into this, so I'm very excited today. When I was the dean of CU School of Public Policy, we organized what we called ambassadorial lecture series, and the title was Dreams in Politics. And this was about nations' dreams, how they affect and shape responses to policy challenges. And here we have a global dream, and that's a dream that all workers work under decent conditions within sustainable businesses. And of course, it's not our responsibility to dictate workers, employers, how to achieve this, what to do. They inherently understand. But maybe there are situations when they don't have some key information. For instance, when they lack knowledge about the amount required for decent standard of living, comparable across countries, traceable over time. And that is precisely where WageIndicator steps in with the concept of the living wage, covering over 165 countries and 2,600 regions. It's an immense coverage. And I would like to really commend Pauline, Fiona, Kea, and the entire global WageIndicator team for doing this fantastic job. I'd like to also thank the team at my own institute, CELSI, for inspiring us and providing us with an opportunity to contribute towards this dream. Now, of course, the key question is what's in it? Yes, what's in this dream? And we should ask what's in this dream for workers. And the answers are very, very clear to me. A decent livelihood, freedom from material deprivation, no hunger or cold, the ability to wake up in your own bed, dress up, have breakfast, commute to work, send your children to school, repair your roof when it breaks, access healthcare when ill, and call your elderly, maybe lonely parents in the afternoon. And this is not granted, this is not guaranteed everywhere. We know this very well. That's why it's important that we provide for it. Now, of course, it's workers, but it's also businesses. What's in it for businesses? And I say, well, sustainable operations, the ability to report sustainable HR practices to your shareholders and stakeholders, but also a competitive advantage through retaining workers' commitment and attracting top talents. We know how sensitive talent may be to this kind of questions. Capacity to address whatever employment disputes they might be. Also meeting the preferences of consumers, who also may be sensitive to being a good employer, and stakeholders. Access to sensitive markets, procurement, transparency, reputation, and also, very importantly, industry leadership. What's in it for social partners then? Well, better informed wage bargaining, harmonized, comparable, and up-to-date benchmark within and across countries that is calculated with a solid, tested methodology. And as a scientist, of course, I ask, what's in it for me, for scientists? Well, for us, we don't want to, do research and put it in the drawer. We really want to see impact. And so conceptualizing and operationalizing the concept, making it work, it's absolutely inspiring. And it's not only inspiring to me, maybe that's much less important than inspiring students and guiding them from the classroom material to actual real world impact. So I can really see this in the classroom. Now, of course, we need to ask this very critical and crucial question, whether it works, whether there is evidence that what we calculate, what we do actually works. And as a researcher, I can say, well, yes, it does. We have examined whether workers in occupations who are able to afford more of those living wage packages, ensuring sufficient availability of food and housing and health, etc., whether in those occupations where you can afford more of it, whether there is low risk of material deprivation or hardship, and whether these people are more satisfied with their lives. We studied 44 countries, 7 occupation groups, and we use all kinds of statistical techniques to do this. And what we have discovered so far is truly exciting. Living wages do indeed measure deprivation. The more of the living wage baskets you can afford, the lower the risk of dissatisfaction with life, and also the lower the risk of material deprivation in terms of access to food, medicine, or cash. And we're studying more areas of material deprivation. But this is also just the beginning, because we also found that the living wages are more effective in enabling decent living than the current minimum wages. So there is work to do. Additionally, it's apparent that if you earn less than the living wage, any extra income very significantly improves your situation. But if you're above the living wage, the living wage calculated by the wage indicator, the additional benefits of reducing deprivation are much smaller, if any. And that's precisely what shows that the living wages that we calculate within the wage indicator is the right number, because that's exactly the tipping point. That's exactly the important level at which the situation for workers changes, and it pinpoints the income level needed to ensure decent living and dignity. So there is additional evidence I could talk about. I want to spare you from that, but so far evidence is telling us that paying living wages rather spurs innovation, upgrading, and prosperity into society than any potential detrimental effects. And I want to close off by saying that, well, this is a process towards what we share as a dream. And I would like to invite you all to please join us in this endeavor, join us on this journey from numbers to dignity and prosperity, and to empowering global communities through living wages. Please live this dream with us. Thank you. Back to you, Fiona.
Thanks a lot, Martin. And I already immediately got a question in the chat if your research is already published and available. To let you know that there is an interview with Martin and his co-authors for this research that will come out very soon. And currently the paper is up for reference in a journal. So hopefully that will be in the journal will take a couple of years, most likely. But we will publish the research earlier in any case, and we can share that with you. And it will always be all of the WageIndicator publications are always public on the website, and we can share, Thief, I think we can maybe share a link to the publication page as well, where this can be found. I see there's still many, many more questions, but I'm very conscious of people's time and the fact that we have many people in this Zoom room. So I'm not going to open the floor for questions. What I will invite you to do, and Chancellor, maybe you can open up the final slide, is that like many of my colleagues have said in the chat, this webinar was really a first launch and an introduction to our publication that we only just published yesterday. We are really happy that this is done, and it's been a huge endeavor from many, many team members to publish all of this data from all of the data sheets into the website and all of that. I would like to invite all of you to just start browsing, start viewing the living wages for your region, or for a region where you would like to go on holidays, or for a region where you think you might go and work, and explore the different living wages that we have and the living wage estimates that we have across the world. If you have any further questions in relation to our methodology or the way that we come to our estimates, please feel free to reach out. If you have any questions in relation to why we published certain estimates and why some of the other estimates are still behind a paywall, please also feel free to reach out. We're happy to explain. If you have any questions on how WageIndicator continues to work together with partners, but also with the ILO, with union partners, with employers organizations, and with employers on how we actually make living wages a reality. Also, and I would like to really mention and commend what Rachel said on the importance of collective bargaining in this process. Living wages don't become a reality just because we publish numbers. But they become a reality because living wages are bargained out between workers and employers and their representatives. So we really hope that this is a crucial step in demystifying the living wage discussions and opening up to at least that data can be visible at this scale. And we really would like to invite you to come work with us on this. Share your thoughts and your feedback. We're really keen on learning more from all of you. What we also said in the chat, we will be hosting after this, every month, we will be hosting a session, a webinar style session as well, with a bit less people on ongoing conversations about our data, about how we implement and how we work together with partners. So please feel free to subscribe to one of those webinars. The first one will be on the 17th of May, I believe. And but I hope Chancellor Murphy can also put that in the chat. The first webinar will be very soon, and there you're also welcome to come and share a lot of your questions. Please feel free to reach out to office@wageindicator.org. Feel free to reach out to Rachel or to Gilles from one of the companies who already works with us if you want to. And thank you for being here. Keep in touch, and wishing all of you a very lovely rest of the day or evening or morning, wherever you are. Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right, I'm going to close the room now.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
You know.